Press the button, my friend.
The Out of Bounds Show is live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
All right, guys. David Johnson coming up in a few minutes. Good morning. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for making us your SEC football show of choice. In the great state of Mississippi, we're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app and the zone1059.com. The show is brought to you by the Men's Clinic. It's an anti-aging clinic for men. The Men's Clinic on Highland Colony in Madison. Dr. Mike Manning, Dr. Cliff Adams. If you feel like you're low testosterone, you want to go to the Men's Clinic, get a free blood test, then they'll walk you through what direction you need to go. TheManThing.com, the Men's Clinic, an anti-aging clinic for men. Highland Colony in Madison, Dr. Mike Manning and Dr. Cliff Adams, TheManThing.com. Free blood test to see where you are testosterone-wise. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. ESPN 1059, The Zone. The Blakey Blakester is so excited that he's here on the show today.
Yes, sir. Every day.
Every day.
Every day. Because I'm a professional.
There's no question about that.
Facts.
You know?
It's undeniable.
You and Antonio Brown. That's what I think of. Yeah. When I think of professionals.
That's probably the meanest thing you've ever said to me.
Oh, wow. No, it's not.
It's pretty offensive.
Okay. All right.
Pretty hurtful.
1059 The Zone, WRKS, ESPN. We'll have David Johnson here in a few minutes, and I'm looking forward to jumping into what all is going on with Ole Miss football. Devontae Shuler turned 23 years old today. That's kind of a really good thing for Kermit Davis Jr., Blake. To have a 23-year-old running your team instead of a 19-year-old, like a lot of college basketball teams.
Like Kentucky?
Oh, Calipari's going to go to the NBA, isn't he? This is it. This is going to drive him out of Lexington to the NBA.
Does the NBA want John Calipari?
Absolutely. I think he could get a job in 1.4 seconds, just to be exact. I do. Come on. Look at all these teams. I'm not saying he would go and, I mean, it's hard to win. You know the drill. You got to have stars, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but the money's good. Ask Billy Donovan. Right? Billy Donovan, you could argue, if he went back to college basketball this morning, would be the best basketball. I understand Krzyzewski's longevity and Roy Williams championships. But you could argue he may be the best basketball coach in college basketball because the dude's a freak. Decides to leave that game, go to the Thunder, knew they weren't going to win it. Now he's going to the Bulls. They don't have the stars. But he's making a ton of money, and he obviously digs the NBA life. And it looks to me like Billy Donovan was tired of AAU recruiting. I'm just guessing. Back to Cal. This may drive him to the NBA. Back to what we were talking about. Devontae Shuler's 23 years old. He's leading the Ole Miss Rebels in basketball. That is rare. He's a senior.
Yep. Also rare.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Howland just got gutted.
And at the most important position, too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The kid plays on the perimeter with the ball in his hands every single possession. He didn't think twice about beating Auburn on Saturday. Kids played 120 games or something, maybe more, 130 games of college basketball. He's been on the road half of that. He's been in planes, hotel rooms, different gyms. It's all good. Give me the ball. Mm-hmm. And he's smart, and he's gotten better, and he's a good player, and that's what you want. You know, Ben Howland lost Reggie Perry, Robert Woodard, Nick Weatherspoon. I don't know where he's playing. You know, and Tyson. Well, Tyson was a senior, but man, when you get gutted like that, it's extremely difficult. But when you get a guy like Hugh Weatherspoon, Terrence Davis, or Devontae Shuler, or Breon Tyree that hangs around for 4 years, man, that's money in the bank, Blake. When you're playing 22 and 23-year-olds in college basketball, that's how Villanova can beat Duke. That's why Villanova has 2 titles.
Does it somewhat surprise you then that Ole Miss has struggled to an extent the way they have?
Yeah, but have they found with the way they played the last 2 weeks? I mean, they're playing really. I mean, they're winning a lot of games, and are they going to continue? Because the league is weird this year. Obviously, Kentucky's not awesome. Florida's not awesome. Bama, who doesn't care, 98.4% of their fans cannot name more than one starter on the team and don't know who the coach is, who is Nate Oates from Buffalo. And they don't know that he's from Buffalo either. Right?
So they played number 10 Missouri tonight. I guess tonight's kind of it'll tell you for real. Would that be the fair way to say it?
Yes.
Because if you can win tonight, you're actually like marching in the right direction.
Yeah. That's a lot of W's in the last couple of weeks.
Then you have State on.
That should be a W.
February 20th. Oh, no, excuse me. South Carolina is the 13th. And
that
the
should be a W. South Carolina's not good.
Yeah, at South Carolina, then home to Mississippi State.
Those should be 2 more. So Kermit could rip off 3 in a row here if he can upset Missouri, who don't. I mean, I understand they're number 10 in the country, but they're not a dominant team by any stretch. David Johnson coming up here in a minute. Rebels 247 on the Coors Light guest line. Coors Light and crawfish. Does that sound good to you? It does to me. You know, a sack of crawfish, a cold Coors Light, and some buddies. I'm in on that. Who's taking me to Mudbugs this afternoon, Blake? Oh, Blake is. Fantastic. So we're going to Mudbugs, and Blake's going to pay for the crawfish and Coors Light. So with crawfish season, the perfect pairing with crawfish, Coors Light, made to chill. Live in the Bank Plus studio, the Out of Bounds show is powered by Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior Foundation. Foundation issues are miserable. Superior Foundation can take care of you. Superior Foundation. Want to welcome in David Johnson, Rebels 247, on the Coors Light guest line and the Out of Bounds show. You know, David, I was thinking about this, my takeaway from the Ole Miss football season. Obviously, Lane and the crew did a good job. Corral is even more talented than we thought. I think your quote in August was, Bo, or September, right before the season started, hey, this offense is tailor-made for Matt Corral. But I want to go back a little bit. Matt Luke. Mm-hmm. Is Matt Luke a head coach in the Southeastern Conference? I don't think so. But is Matt Luke a good offensive line coach? Yes. And does he bring some other things to the table? Here's what I think Matt did. I think Matt left a toughness in the program. He's a former offensive lineman in the 90s. He's my age. I remember him. He was an overachiever from Gulfport. Ended up having to start day one for Tommy Tuberville because of recruiting sanctions and so on. Just everything that you want in a player. Loved Ole Miss and all that. He may not have checked all the boxes, but one thing that he did, he made sure the toughness and culture piece stayed with the program so that when he handed it over to Lane, Lane didn't have to reboot or rebuild that. Do you agree with that, David?
You know, I think when you look back on what Matt Luke did long term, and I'm talking when you're 10 years removed from this and the emotions aren't as raw and the opinions aren't as strong, I think Ole Miss fans will come back around to appreciate the bridge that Matt Luke provided for the program between Hugh Freeze and Lane Kiffin. You know, as far as how much of that culture he left, I don't know. You know, that tone is set by whatever coaching staff is in there. And, you know, I think it's easily changed. And I think this is Lane Kiffin's culture that's up here with the Ole Miss program now. But I do think history will be a kinder judge to Matt Luke in the time he was the head coach here. And you're absolutely right. A tremendous offensive line coach. And, you know, just yesterday, 247 Sports named him as one of the top 10 recruiters in America in this 2021 class. And, when you look back at the offensive linemen that Matt Luke brought into Ole Miss, I mean, Laramie Tunsil, he was involved in that recruitment. Greg Little was involved in that recruitment. Those are two franchise-type NFL offensive linemen.
Royce
and
Newman?
A whole cast of others. Royce Newman, that is about to get drafted. Rod Taylor, who had a cup of coffee in the NFL. It goes on and on. And, I don't think you can argue with the fact that Matt Luke is an effective recruiter. And again, I think history is going to judge Matt as a bridge between Freeze and Lane Kiffin. And it was a necessary bridge as the programs got through the sanctions.
Yeah. David Johnson, Rebels 247 on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Lane Train going into year 2. And he has Matt Corral coming back, the best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. Many people believe a top 5 QB in college football. And there's momentum now that they've turned the corner, so to speak, as Dave and I are discussing, with Freeze to Luke to Kiffin. A lot of excitement in Oxford going into the 2021 season. The new schedule was released a week or so ago. They should go 3-0 out of the gate, which would be huge too. All right. Jeff Lebby. What are you hearing, David?
Mm-hmm.
Central Florida could be interested in this young man. He's very talented. He's been there. What is the latest? Have you heard anything on Lebby as a serious candidate for Central Florida?
Oh, yeah, I think you have to absolutely consider him a serious candidate. There was even a grassroots campaign by the Central Florida players to bring Lebby back. They love Lebby. As I understand it, the holdover administration at UCF, very fond of Jeff Lebby as well. Now, I'm not quite sure if they've made the move on hiring their athletic director yet.
They did.
One guy – I'm sorry?
They did. Arkansas State's AD
there you go.
is now the Central Florida AD. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes you wonder. And this guy was at Arkansas State when Gus Miles was at Arkansas State. So that makes you wonder if, maybe there's one eye on Lebby and one eye on Gus Miles. We're just going to have to see what they do. But to think he's not a serious and viable candidate is wrong. I don't think that would be right. And, everybody wants upward mobility, right? And to become a head coach at really one of the premier group of 5 programs in the country, I think that's an appropriate stepping stone for a guy who's a coordinator in the SEC. Ole Miss has done a lot to try to keep Jeff Lebby here.
Sure.
Even before his name surfaced, with the UCF job. But, we'll just have to see what the next day or so brings. They're in a hurry to hire a head coach. That's going to happen sooner rather than later. And, if he leaves Oxford, what would that do to change the schematics of the Ole Miss offense?
Ooh, that's a great question, David. What direction would Kiffin go?
Because, there's a consensus out there that if Lebby goes, maybe a couple of more offensive assistants would go. And if Lebby goes, you could actually be looking at a totally revamped coaching staff on the offensive side of the football. So, is that a concern? Of course it is. Absolutely. What you would like to have, if you're an Ole Miss fan, is a second year of Matt Corral and Jeff Lebby together. And instead of Matt Corral having his 4th offensive coordinator in 4 seasons. You really don't want to see that. Mm-hmm. But, that's certainly a major storyline out there now, and one Ole Miss fans should be aware of.
All right, so we'll track that. Central Florida hired their AD, and so now this will expedite the process, as David's talking about. David just threw out another Gus Miles on. That Central Florida job's it's arguably the best G5 job in the country. Great place to live in Orlando, players everywhere, sunshine. So something to keep an eye out on. Would Gus throw his name in the hat? And then, people really like Jeff Lebby in and around that Central Florida program. David Johnson, Rebels 247 on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Hey, as we look at the quarterback room, David, we know that Corral is the best quarterback in the SEC, returning, and I mean, he's the best quarterback, period, and he's returning. What else? Who's the next guy in the QB room, David?
Yeah, I think that is a major question going into spring practice because, when you look at the roster right now, behind Corral, you have a Jackson guy and Kincaid Dent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're bringing in Luke Altmaier, who's a 4-star prospect, highly rated recruit. He's already on campus. Then there's the John Rhys Plumlee question. And everybody knows John Rhys is going to be busy with baseball in the spring. His time with the football program is bound to be limited. So what do you do? Because, you would look at things and go, well, John Rhys Plumlee's a backup quarterback. But John Rhys is not really tooled to do what that offense wants its quarterback to do. And that's throw the football a lot and throw it downfield a lot. So, with his limited time, with him playing baseball in the spring, with the fact that they really want him to move to a slot receiver kind of general offensive weapon role, does that open the door for Kincaid Dent and or Luke Altmaier to have an incredible spring and become Matt Corral's backup? That is probably one of the biggest position battles I think that's going to go on during spring practice is who will be Matt Corral's backup quarterback. And where is John Rhys Plumlee's mindset in terms of how he's going to contribute to the football program?
Yeah.
Will he make the move to slot receiver and just be a general havoc guy on offense, which he owns the skill set to do, or will he stubbornly hold on to his desire to play quarterback? That's the question mark because, look, I love John Rhys, but he is not the guy that you want behind center every snap in this offense. He's just not that guy. You want a quarterback with a pro-style arm. Running Lane Kiffin and Jeff Lebby's offense. And that's not John Rhys, and I think that opens the door for a Kincaid Dent or a Luke Altmaier to grab hold of that number 2 quarterback spot.
Interesting.
This spring.
Boy, spring practice is going to be big as far as the number 2 in Oxford. You got your number 1. He's a phenomenal player. Could end up being a first-round draft pick in the NFL. But from there, this is going to be fascinating. So David Johnson, Rebels 247 on the Coors Light guest line. Do you think that Kiffin would so we've got transfers going in to Leach and Mississippi State, guys like Jack Abraham and Chance Lovertich, guys like that. And there'll be others move around SEC, G5, ACC. Do you think that Lane and his staff would consider a transfer quarterback to add some depth to the room until maybe Altmaier's up and running, David?
That is a very interesting question. That's certainly a possibility if it were the right guy. But, with quarterbacks, it's, you mentioned Lovertich and Abraham going to Mississippi State, and I scratch my head on that because usually with a quarterback in the portal, priority number 1, is to go to a program where he's going to be the guy. Right. Particularly when you're talking about transfers. You're usually leaving a program where you're not going to be the guy, and you want to go into one where you are. And those two guys probably have a battle at Mississippi State getting on the field.
Right.
But so I don't know. I don't know that if you could get that right quarterback to come in here and knowingly come in and be pacified probably late in his career of just putting on a costume on Saturdays and being a backup. So I don't know if that right quarterback would necessarily materialize for Ole Miss in the portal, but that's a very fair question because when you look at Dent, there's no experience there. When you look at Altmaier, he's a true freshman. So in the unfortunate scenario that anything were to happen to Matt Corral next fall, who would be the guy that could go out there
and win a game,
and run that offense and win a game? Yeah, who's that guy? And that may be a glaring hole on the Ole Miss roster, especially if John Rhys Plumlee is moved permanently away from the quarterback's room. I guess you could always move him back, but then you're going to have to alter what you want to do offensively.
Man. And what if JRP decides he wants to play QB for Will Hall at Southern Miss or Jeff Lebby at Central Florida if he were to take the job? And then you're right. It goes Kincaid, Dent, Altmaier, and then interesting. All right. David Johnson, Rebels 247. How many spots again, David, transfer portal over the next few months that the Ole Miss football staff has to fill?
Yeah, well, they brought in the linebacker from
Chance.
Maryland, Chance Campbell.
Yeah.
And so, you're looking at just a couple of spots left. Okay. And Kiffin's not a guy that's going to reach, so they're not going to take anybody just to fill those spots. They're going to have to be the right guys. They're aiming for defensive linemen. That's what they want. If those guys materialize in the portal and they can get a couple of D tackles, I think that's where you're going to see them use those spots. I wouldn't put out the possibility. I wouldn't doubt the possibility that if the right tight end got in the portal, they jump on that guy as well.
How big was it? I've got a minute here, David. How big was it to win the battle on Tywone Malone?
I think it was huge for a lot of reasons. Number one, he is the rare true freshman, I think, that can work his way into that defensive line rotation next year. And they need help there in the worst kind of ways. And secondly, it created, continued this mystique of momentum for the program. They made it perfectly clear on signing day. They were after one guy and one guy only, and they got their guy. So, as you described it as the Lane train, it keeps on rolling. And, they finished strong. They finished with a top 20 class. They got the one man left on the board that they said they had to have. And, it creates the excitement. It keeps stoking the fire of the excitement around this program, which, is reaching Hugh Freeze levels. Again, amongst the fans and everything, they believe in what this staff can do and what this program can do right now. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation, looks like they're going to jump out to a 3-0 start. They'll have a bye week. They'll be inside the top 25. They're already inside these way too early top 25s with a game against Alabama set. I think this is a team that can win 8 or 9 games next year. And if that happens, and all bets are off as to what they can accomplish because they're recruiting and they're closing on guys.
Ole Miss opens with Louisville and Atlanta to start it off, and then a couple of non-conference games. They're going to have a great opportunity to start off 3-0, as David said. David Johnson, Ole Miss.247sports.com, at Rebels247 on Twitter. Next time we'll get into the 2020 class that looks deep and loaded. David, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, Bo, thank you.
David Johnson, Rebels 247 on the Out of Bounds show, presented by Superior Foundation. Todd Sandridge and Trey Pace will take care of your home. They'll back it up with a lifetime warranty. Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior.ms.